What's going on, everybody? This is Benjamin Bakchar bringing you another F122 video. Today we get our first featured event of F122. So the first two weekly events were the typical practice quali race, but this is a featured event. For those of you that are new to the game, it involves you being thrown into a scenario and having to complete the scenario. Pretty much it's just you trying to overtake a certain amount of cars and reach a certain position. So this week, post Austrian GP, we are racing as Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari at Jeddah, starting, I think it was P15 or P14, and trying to work our way up to P8 by the end of the race. So Jeddah has been known to be a pretty easy track to race against the AI at in F1 2021. At 110 difficulty, it was easy for me to beat the AI, even starting from like P20, which isn't saying much because I suck at this game, but this track was really easy. This year it's not quite so easy, but it's still probably one of the easier tracks to race at. So yeah, like I mentioned, you are Carlos Sainz. This is my first attempt at 110, I should say. As you can see, we have caught up to Norris in P8 on the final lap. Coming into the final sector here, we are under 1 second and within DRS. I thought I was going to be able to catch up to him by the time we cross the finish line, but he actually turns on the afterburners on this final lap. He runs out of battery here. Coming into the final turn, we're right on his rear wing. We have DRS, but only 10% battery left, and just wasn't enough to catch up to him. But it was pretty encouraging to see, because that was my first run at 110. I initially started it at 100 difficulty. It was a little too easy. I ended up finishing like P7. And then I bumped it up to 105 again, too easy again. I didn't make it to P7, but I did beat it at 105. And then this is my second run on 110. So you can see right now you are stuck behind Latifi about 2.5 seconds, but it shouldn't be too difficult to catch up to him if you're a pretty decent driver. This year's featured events, at least based off of this first one so far, it seems to be a little bit different than the featured events from F1 2021. In F1 2021, the featured events were very scripted. So even though in F1 22, there are certain cars that will DNF at certain points of the race, in F1 2021, you could literally catch up to the same car at the same corner every single time you ran the featured event. But this year, the 4 or 5 times that I ran it, I don't know if it's the adaptive AI that they introduced to F1 22, but every single time that I ran it, there was a different winner, there was different people on the podium, and I caught up to different drivers at different points in the race on different points on track. So that actually mixes things up a little bit and makes this game a little bit more fun, I think, having it be a little bit more random. But anyway, back to the race here. We catch up to Latifi by the end of the first lap. My first time I didn't have to use too much battery, but again, because of the adaptive AI, the second time I ran it, he was a little bit faster and I had to use a good chunk of battery to catch up to him. But we do make it out in front of him in P14 now. You don't really have to worry about catching up to Checo because he ends up DNFing with 2 laps to go anyway. So don't blow your ERS here trying to catch up to Perez, as it's really not going to be necessary by the end of the race. So you're really looking to overtake Stroll, Joe, Albon, Tsunoda, and I believe the last one is Norris. Yeah, so only 5 drivers. You can kind of ignore Sergio Perez. And as you can see right now, I'm not really using any battery. You want to save your battery for that last battle with Norris or any other driver that you might have a little bit of difficulty with catching up to. But yeah, I'm not going to bore you too much with this driving. I'll just skip forward to when we actually catch up to somebody. So just skipping ahead now towards the second half of lap 44, we find ourselves right behind Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. Perez has jumped Stroll and Zhou Guanyu. And now you're looking to overtake these 2 drivers right here. Stroll's not incredibly fast. We end up catching up to him right at the final corner. He doesn't have DRS on the car in front of him, but we have DRS off of him. Again, using a little bit of battery now, just because they like to dive it into turn 1 if they're close enough. I thought I was far enough ahead, but as you can see going into turn 1 now, Stroll actually does make a little bit of a dive bomb, but it's not too difficult to deal with as we just kind of sweep around the outside and then get the inside on turn 2. There, up next, Guan Yu Zhou, or Zhou Guan Yu, I should say. As of right now, he's still within DRS of Perez, but Perez is a rocket ship in this race, just like in real life. So Zhou should be outside of his DRS by the time you make it to the next DRS zone, and again, shouldn't be too difficult. Although they don't seem to use too much battery to try and defend, so as you'll see in a moment, I have a little bit of an issue when I catch up to Zhou in the next DRS zone, as he is going incredibly slow, but I don't want to try to jump out in front of him and then battle going into the left-hand turn after DRS zone. So actually lay off the throttle a little bit. But looking back on it now, I probably should have just turned on the overtake right away and get out in front of him, as he does cost us a few tenths there. But in the next DRS zone, which is literally like a corner or two away, we get DRS again, and then we make the easy pass there. So Perez has now jumped Albon, and he is on the softs, and I think by this point in the race his softs are gone, so it's not going to be too difficult. Always keeping your eye on the driver behind you, because they will always attack into turn 1 if they are close enough. Luckily for us, Zhou was a little bit too far back there, so he doesn't try to make a move. But as you can see, I think it only took like 2 corners and we're already almost within DRS of Albon, and at this point Checo's gone past Tsunoda as well. So again, making it pretty easy. Perez battling with the AI cars in front of him slows them down enough for us to where we can catch up to them pretty easily. So this will be the first of the DNFs that you run into. Vettel DNFs going into the sweeping left-hander, but he's behind you anyway. I think he's a lapped car, so it doesn't really affect the race much. Now just sticking to behind Albon here, just trying to stay as close as possible and use just DRS to get out in front of him and not waste your battery, as you will need it for the final few laps to catch up to Norris here. So again, running into the same issue, not really sure what I wanted to do, but he was going so much slower than Zhou there that I just decided to get out in front of him. He's not going to catch up to us in this DRS zone anyway. I do use a little bit of battery here just to make sure that he doesn't, but he's in a Williams, and I don't think these weekly events have equal car performance. So if you get out in front of a Williams, it's pretty much a done deal. They're not going to be able to catch up to you after that. But luckily we actually catch up to Tsunoda there as well while we were using our battery. So now we are within Tsunoda's DRS. Tsunoda's a little bit quicker than the cars that we just overtook, so you will have a bit more of a challenge to stick behind Tsunoda here, but you don't have to lay off the throttle like we did with Zhou and Albon the few laps beforehand. And luckily now that we caught up to him, he's well outside of Perez's DRS, so this shouldn't be an issue at all once again. And like I said earlier before, because of the adaptive AI, I'm assuming it's because of the adaptive AI that makes the battles on track a little bit different every single time you run this race. There were instances where Norris was much further ahead than us, and then there were other instances where Norris was closer to us. You know, I think the race before, Norris was ahead of Perez by the time we caught up to Perez, and then he DNF'd. But in this race, you'll see in a moment, Perez is actually fast enough to catch up to Norris. They actually start battling a little bit, which slows Norris down. Perez actually overtakes Norris before he DNFs, which gives us a much easier time. We actually catch up to Norris 1 lap earlier than the first time we ran this at 110 difficulty. So if you find that your skill may not be good enough to catch up to Norris, just keep trying, because sometimes the RNG of the game will kind of help you out, where Perez will catch up to Norris, and then they can start fighting and bring Norris back a little bit closer to you. So if you actually look at the timing chart right now, Perez is a little over a second behind Norris, but as I mentioned earlier, Perez is really quick in this game, or in this race, I should say. And within the next sector, he catches up to Norris, which then starts their battling and then slows him down. I really like this new adaptive AI thing because every time that I ran it before, like I said, there was always a different winner. I think the first race Verstappen won, and then the second race Hamilton won, and then the third race Verstappen won, and then the final race Verstappen won again. But every time that I finished the race, even though Verstappen won the race, there were different people on the podium with him, which makes it really, really cool because it's not just like F1 2021 where you're just playing pretty much the same race over and over again. You know, you'll catch up to Gasly by turn 2 every single time, then like Albon DNFs, and then you catch up to Leclerc at turn 10 2 laps later. This almost feels like, even though the goal is to finish in P8, it's pretty much a completely different race every single time. So if you were paying attention to the timing charts, you can actually see Norris and Perez moving up and down on the position charts, and by the time Sainz DNFs at the start of lap 49, we are about 2 seconds behind Norris, and he is on soft compound tires as well, which I believe at this point have gone off. I totally forgot to even look at the age of the tires that we're on when I started this race, so I don't really remember how old these tires are, but they actually felt like they still had really good grip throughout the entire race from lap 41 to lap 50. So I'm assuming that they're pretty young tires, if not fresh medium compound tires. But yeah, you can see we have already cut the gap to Norris to 1.3 seconds. I think it was a little bit over 2 seconds to Norris earlier. So by this point in the race, Norris is really, really slow. We have 30% battery left. Last year, Jeddah was an easy track to harvest battery. I don't believe that's the case this year, so you do have to be a little bit careful with deploying your battery. But at this point now, we are so close to being within DRS that I decided to risk it, use a little bit of battery to make sure that we're in his DRS, get DRS on this start-finish straight here, and then just try to keep as close to him as possible on this final lap. There's plenty of DRS zones here, and luckily they're all pretty much one right after the other at the end of the lap at Jeddah. So long as you're close enough to Norris on the final lap here and you have a decent amount of battery, it shouldn't be too difficult for you to overtake Norris on this final lap. Again, this is at 110. I myself am not a very fast driver, but 110 at Jeddah has always been pretty easy last year and this year. So if you find that you're not doing well, just keep at it, and I think eventually with RNG, with the AI battling and just you getting used to the car and the track, after a while you'll probably find that you're racing at like 5 to 10 difficulty higher than you normally would at other tracks. I don't know why, but Jeddah just seems to always be an easy track for everybody. So yeah, we actually get DRS off of Norris right here as well. 30% battery left. It seems like right at this point in the race, he starts to get a little bit faster, but we use a little bit of overtake, and with the help of DRS, we get right on his rear wing. Coming up to this next DRS zone, we're still right behind him, and then at this point, I make the decision to just pass him, and then hopefully just get a better exit. Trying to save a little bit of battery for the final start-finish straight here. And then we get a much better exit than Norris does, and it doesn't even matter. We probably didn't even need any battery. But yeah, this was really fun. I love these featured events. I wish that this could help you guys out, but like I said, because of the adaptive AI, it seems like every time you run this race, it's a little bit different. But I do hope that there are some sort of like strategies or philosophies on racing that you see me using that'll help you out in your run. And if you have any questions or concerns, definitely leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll try my best to get back to you. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I very much enjoyed this. Remember to eat your bok choy. If you think I've earned it, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Oh, actually, you know what? I probably should have mentioned this before, but when we finished it at the time of finishing this on Wednesday night, it was good enough for somewhere in the 90s. I think it was like 97th or 96th overall out of 5,500 to 6,000 players that participated. So yeah, even though I still am using the racing line assist, I was still proud of the finish here and the points score. But yeah, anyway, that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Hey guys, this is Boonjamin jumping back in again. I think the corner cutting stringency is set to regular on these weekly events and featured events. Please, if there's anybody that at EA that's seeing this, I'm asking you to please turn it on to strict and make this a little bit more challenging, especially at a track like Jeddah where cutting corners and track extending is really easy. Just doesn't make it as challenging as it could be. I know I'm still using racing line assist, but that's a little bit different. I still have to drive well and stay within the lines. But yeah, anyway, that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one.